The two teams launched at each other. Both of them had passion in their eyes and anger in their hearts, and they both intended to teach each other a lesson. Of course, the fight wasn't going to happen because, you guessed it, Tang Tang arrived at the scene. It stopped Aang's kick and Redhead's punch, grabbing both of them. It's safe to say that these two were fucked. There was a look of rage in his eyes. He never expected his understudies to be fighting each other. In an instant, he flung both of them in different directions. The Redhead went flying towards our hero's squad, and Aang went flying towards the black gun. Redhead managed to land on its feet as Sidu Liu and Makoto looked at him. Meanwhile, Aang managed to land on his feet as well, just next to the opponent team, while feeling a bit disappointed that he couldn't see the standards of the modern warriors. Tang Tang was annoyed. He had an aura of rage so strong that you could visibly see the anger emanating off of him. He looked at both of the squads and told them that they have no sense of survival. He lectured them that the sun was about to set, but they were fighting amongst each other. They were acting as if they were an offering of food for the demon horde. The Redhead started to blame it all on our heroes, stating that they even smacked his mask off. Sidu Liu looked at him in disdain, telling him that he was acting like a spoiled brat by complaining to the squadron leader. Thankfully, Makoto stepped in, telling the squadron leader that she has photographic proof that the Black Gun Squad killed the 3 demons they had captured earlier, to the surprise of Lan Snow, who had no idea when she even got that photo. Tang Tang was confused. He couldn't believe that a rookie squad would take on a high-rank mission. Sidu Liu gave her 2 cents on the matter, telling the squadron leader that they had already completed the mission, but the Black Gun Squad destroyed their efforts. Tang Tang understood the situation. However, they were about to get some bad news. You see, while our heroes thought that the Black Gun were going overboard with their actions, they actually went through the same thing when they were rookies. Of course, he also said that they were in control of how they respond to the situation. But none of that mattered, because what matters is the point system. As long as a squad doesn't intentionally harm or endanger another squad's life, everything else is on the table. These rules apply to every city where warriors are trained. He told them that as warriors, they would face even greater challenges in the future because they won't be facing such basic threats. Apparently, Tang Tang wouldn't even have interfered if the sun wasn't setting. He just wanted the squads to return home safely, which is why he was stopping the combat. Which is honestly really disappointing. I would have loved to see them fight. However, before leaving, he told the Black Gun Squad that not only did a rookie squad snatch a high-ranking mission from them, but their leader also got beat up by them. He told them to reflect on their incompetence, and the Redhead could do nothing but acknowledge that. The rowdy Redhead starts walking away, but instead of reflecting on his actions, he moved towards Aang. He asked our hero for his name, looking straight into his eyes. The MC stared back, his golden eyes glowing, as he stated that his name was Aang. For a moment, it looked like Redhead had shat his pants. But then, he just started laughing while walking away. He found it absurd that this kid was named after the greatest warrior who ever lived. As he walked away, he assured and warned our hero that he wouldn't let his squad obtain points too easily. He swore that this month, Aang's team would be ranked at the bottom of the leaderboard. He walked up towards his mask, placed profoundly on the ground. As he picked it up, he looked back at our hero one more time, and told him that he would get him back for this as he pointed to the scar on his face. He had now picked up his mask, and he was putting it on as he told his squad that it was time to leave. In an instant, all 4 of them bounced out of there as Aang was just looking. Tang Tang told our heroes that Black Gun might not be the strongest squad, but they were known for their swift execution. He says that they will distract them or straight up destroy their mission progress by any means necessary. They knew how to hold grudges, that's for sure. He continues on, giving more information to our rookies about how the leader of Black Gun excels at firearms. He states that the Black Gun leader didn't use a single firearm in the fight, and if both teams end up going all out at some point, our heroes would have much more to lose than Black Gun would. This concerned Sidu Liu, but she was holding back from saying anything. After that info dump, it was time for them all to get back to the city. Sidu Liu knew that she had to stop thinking about it for now, and told her squad to head for home. As she was walking away, she asked Aang why he was spacing out. She wondered if he was trying to look cool or something. As our girl took the lead, she told him that kick to the Redhead's jaw was pretty darn cool. Aang noted that she was finally warming up to him. While the squad was leaving, Lan Snow asked our boy if he wanted to come over for dinner. Somehow, the reincarnated MC, who barely knew anything about himself except for how weak his body was, had plans. Snow questioned why he was being so secretive about his plans, but Aang simply laughed it off. You see, he had a plan that you could consider straight up stupid. His plan was to capture 3 demons alive, all by himself. Now, it was nighttime, the moon was out and the wolves were howling, and it looked like a dangerous night to wander outside of the city gates. However, our hero did not care. He had a plan and he was going to get it done no matter what. On loudspeakers, there were constant announcements about not leaving the city. It was for the people's own safety, but there was a shadow in the night, sneaking about within the gates, trying to make his way outside. As Aang hid behind a wall, he noted how there were no people in his way as he was sneaking around. All he could hear was this repeating announcement. He wondered about how once the mission is completed, he wants to really check out what this body of his would call home. He peeked out from behind cover now that he knew that the people weren't as vigilant as he expected them to be. He saw a yellow signboard with text on it that said that it was for temporary emergencies only. He wondered whether the city lacked in manpower, or maybe they just thought that nobody would try to leave the city at night. All they did was put up a signboard with no security in sight. He sat down, knowing how different this was from his past life. They had to make sure it was safe. It didn't matter if it was day or night. They even had to carry out nocturnal capture missions sometimes. He thought about how he should use the forceful method from his previous life to capture the demons. Just bump them on the head until they were brain damaged enough to get knocked out. It was nighttime, so he wouldn't have much trouble finding many demons. Aang thought about how big of a genius he was, doing the mission at an unexpected time to completely disrupt the Redhead's plans to stop his team from earning points. However, it seems that he had been caught red-handed. It was none other than the squad leader, Shadowy. And might I say, what of you? This girl was excited on the inside. She gave a random excuse at the dojo and left early. She knew that Aang would try to make a move at night ever since he mentioned that he had plans at sunset. Aang got spooked by the appearance of this silver-haired fox, who noted that he was trying to leave the city in the dead of night. Now, the MC might have been the most powerful warrior in his previous life, but he had never learned how to lie. He told her that he was just out for a stroll. She wasn't an idiot though, and she caught his lie immediately. He gave in and told her the truth. He told her that he was going to give them a surprise. He wanted to complete the mission during nighttime so that it wouldn't get disrupted. However, now that he was caught, it couldn't be helped. He told her to not report this to the superiors and that he would be heading back now. But before he could even finish his sentence, Shadowy told him to count her in. She was more excited about this plan than even he was. You could tell how much interest she had in this. There was a smile on her face while talking to Aang, which is something that never happened before. She was all bubbly inside, thinking about the reaction from the redhead masked guy and his black gun team in the morning. Aang was a bit terrified. He had never seen her giggling like an evil bitch before. However, she denied and said she did not giggle. This girl would punch you in the balls and then deny doing that with a poker face. Anyway, unbeknownst to them, at the topmost peak of the wall, there were two little birdies standing guard. I guess they're not really standing, but while one of them yawns, the other one is chowing down on some good old-fashioned food. The sleepyhead is annoyed. Standing guard is like torture to him and he wonders why anyone would even go out at night unless they wanted to die. He wanted an end to his night guard duty and asked his fellow eater why they won't just shut the gate completely. The eater was a stickler for rules. He immediately told Sleepyhead to be quiet or the squadron leaders might hear what he just said. He explains that they leave a gap open in the big door in case of any emergencies. There was an incident many years ago where a group of refugees fled to their city begging for help while they were being chased by demons. But while the gate was being opened, it took too long and resulted in their deaths. The refugees died horribly under the demon's claws. It was a truly terrifying moment that changed the way guard duty worked. Ever since then, every single city now leaves an emergency gap in their main gate, just in case another situation like that occurs. Human life was more valuable than anything else. I guess Sleepyhead was new to the job, because he had no idea about this. He apologized, and the eater told him that he would get used to it in no time. Fortunately for Sleepyhead, the eater wasn't just hungry for food. He also brought a pervy magazine for his homie to stay awake with. Sleepyhead was immediately awake. His sleep vanished away at the sight of the photo book which featured other cities' female warriors. Pervy the eater had paid a lot of money to get his hands on that, and he was going to let his sleepy comrade take a look. Bro seemed to be having the time of his life. They couldn't believe that it was the latest edition. Meanwhile, Pervy was checking out the waist on one of the models. While the two creeps were too busy looking at the photos, our gorgeous team leader and experienced MC made their way from under the city gate. As Aang ran towards the forest at the other end, he noted how the assessment venue looked different. Squadron leader Tang Tang was right. The fog did get denser at night. He looked at Sidu Liu and told her to follow him to the other direction. They were now far enough away from the city gate to not get detected. This is where they would make their move. Aang told Sidu to follow the plan. He was going to lure the monsters out to this area, and she would go for their heads to knock them out with brute force. He walked into the night fog alone, telling her to wait for him. She was overtaken by his confidence as he entered the nightfall before disappearing into it. In that moment, she felt an itch in her brain that she could not scratch. She was alone in the forest outside of the city, feeling as though the darkness would swallow her at any moment. She wondered if this was fear or was it simply excitement. Regardless, she had no time to think about any of that, and it was time to concentrate. She had to be prepared to follow up with her attacks as soon as Aang would return. After that, Aang started to appear and would bring the demons with him. His expertise in luring the demons was incredible to witness. He managed to lure out non-fin demons each time, making it easier to capture them alive. Liu had never heard of capturing demons by using brute force before, and she found this new method completely unique and exciting as Aang would bring them out. Each time he brought a demon with him, he would holler at her to take the lead. Together, they would attack the demon in their own separate ways, but they both aimed for the head. The demons were huge, so they had to make their way towards their head by either jumping off tree branches or launching themselves off the ground. Aang and Liu were consistently landing blows at the demons' heads, striking them down one by one. They kept taking out demons, toying with them by repeatedly attacking their heads and causing them to pass out. The old-fashioned method of bumping the demons' heads had once again been useful after half a century. The process was going smoothly. They kept bumping their heads until they passed out, and then they would tie them up. It took up a lot of their strength and stamina to do this, but they had finally accomplished it. As our hero wiped the sweat from his face, he remembered that he needs to keep training this body, because in his past life he could have done this with one hand. Liu told Aang that this was the third demon, and that they were finally done. She noted how this was so much more tiring than the dojo strength training, as Aang told her to just leave them there. She was curious to know why they would just leave them be after coming so far. And Aang gave her a lot of info at this moment. He told her that non-fin demons are dumb and don't know how to save their kind. They were also not going to get too close to the city walls, so leaving them was not going to be a problem. He told her that after all those hits to the heads, they were not going to be waking up anytime soon. They had all the time till early morning to come back and submit the mission. This made her even more curious. She wanted to know how he knew so much about the demons. Aang realized that he had said too much and found himself at a loss for words. But their conversation was cut short by the sound of terrifying voices, telling them that they have been found. It was two demonic faces, barely visible in the broken trees in the darkness of the night fog. These were two one-fin demons, who had finally found their target. One of the demons noted that Aang smelled like them. Liu was terrified. She couldn't believe that they faces with two of those monsters. Meanwhile, Aang was losing his shit. He was panicking internally, knowing that they would definitely lose the fight against them if they engaged. They were far away from the city gates, but the spotlights started going off and alarms started blaring. All three of the squadron leaders had made their way to the top of the wall. The emo boy told the two warriors standing guard, Sleepyhead and Pervy the Eater, that they had picked up signs of one-fin demons in the area and ordered them to scan the area with spotlights. They obviously had to oblige. Jessica Rabbit wondered why one-fin demons would reappear in this area and questioned if this was the same one that appeared during the assessment. But Tang Tang had seen the cave, and he knew for a fact that the creature was dead. The spotlights landed in the trees outside the city, and it caught both of the demons hanging around. Pervy let the squadron leaders know that their targets were found, and these two demons looked quite robust and scary. There were two of them, so this wasn't going to be a fun fight. Our emo boy was confused. He had no idea why two of them would appear at the same time, unless something attracted them. He told his subordinates to not panic and just shut the city gates so they would go away. He also told them to ready the defensive turrets, and the guns that surrounded the city began to glow immediately, ready for some brutal demon destruction. However, Tang Tang screamed, telling them not to shut the gates. Jessica Rabbit was confused. Why would he say that? But Tang Tang noticed that there was someone out there. The emo boy ordered the spotlights around once again. As the lights hit the ground, we see Tang Tang boiling with anger as he wonders why the fuck those rookies under his care would be outside at this time of the night. It was Aang and Liu, Tang Tang noted. They were caught between the two one-fin demons, and they were in a world of pain if they couldn't manage to escape this situation right away. Tang Tang had noticed something off in the distance, almost as if there were people down there, people who were visible now that the spotlights had done their job. He realized what was going on. It was those two brats trying to get a head start on tomorrow's high-ranked quests. They sneaked out in the night to get some extra points. It's exactly as he had seen. The two rookies were stuck between a rock and a hard place, as the two one-fin demons lurked their way above them through the trees. Jessica Rabbit was confused. She wondered why the hell those rookies were outside of the city at this time of the night. They stood atop the wall, looking down at the terrifying situation, having no idea what to do. They had to figure something out, or those two were going to die. This is where Tang Tang noticed the three ensnared demons, and everything had cleared itself up pretty easily. He understood what they were trying to do, and he told his comrades that they probably wanted to do the mission of capturing no-fin demons alive during nighttime, so that they don't get disrupted during the day. The emo boy had seen problems like this happen before. Rookie warriors always had a penchant for reckless moves like this, and they used their talent to put on a good performance but usually got themselves in trouble. This case was no exception. Tang Tang was fuming. This man was hella mad, as he started to push his body down so he could jump up into the air and go help them. He was definitely going to punish those two once they got back safely, but for now he had to ensure their safety. As he jumped off the wall, Jessica Rabbit immediately called out to the emo boy to assume command. She told him that she was going after Tang Tang to help rescue those two brats, leaving him in command of the wall. She launched herself into the air as well, following her beloved Tang Tang as they both blasted through the air, falling down off the wall in hopes that they get there in time to save the two rookies. As the emo boy stood there, looking at his comrades jumping off, he felt a bit disappointed that a rare night of drinking was ruined just like that. The one-fin demons quickly realized that the city knew they were there, as one of them began to tell the other one. Meanwhile, on the ground, Aang was panicking as he told Liu to get behind him. He told her that they should wait for help, and that they had to stall for time in case the backup was running slow. Our hero knew that he was the target, he was the one that they wanted. This was evident by their behavior. They were talking like the one-fin demon from the cave a few days ago. He wondered why that was the case. Was it perhaps because of his rebirth into this new body, or did something really happen to him in the cave that set off all demon alarms? Li was no coward. She wasn't going to stand back and let her comrade do everything. She walked up next to him, telling him that they would fight together or not fight at all. The one-fin demons got cocky. They asked the rookies why they would even dare to fight back. Immediately, the two demons began to pounce off of the tree and onto the ground. Somehow, only one of them managed to land on the ground, while the other fucker simply vanished into thin air. Suddenly, the demon managed to appear behind them. The rookies were now trapped between the two one-fin demons, with nowhere to go. The demon slashed, stating that they would kill the useless one first. For some reason they considered our girl a non-threat. As the demon began to slash away at Liu, its hand almost swiping through her body, Aang managed to push himself against the demon, slamming into it. The demon's slash attack was so powerful, as its fist pounded upon the ground, it broke apart into pieces. Thankfully, the two rookies managed to survive the attack. Liu had managed to find herself at a slight distance from the demon, enough to launch a counterattack as the demon admired their quick reflexes. She immediately swung her foot, aiming right at the demon's head. She was going to smash its skull in. Yet, it was of no use, as she felt mere drops of water splashing onto her face. Her foot was caught in a spider web of blue strings, as her kick had missed the demon's face by just an inch. In an instant, the blue demon appeared behind her, entangling her even more in its sharp blue threads. She was completely bound now. The kinky demon had covered her in ropes and knots, as she squealed in pain from how much the pull was cutting into her skin. Aang was enraged. He couldn't believe that he had led his teammate into such a dangerous situation. If anything happened to her, he was going to blame himself for the rest of his life. However, before he could even react, the demon had made its way towards him. With its fist held shut, it mocked our hero for getting distracted, calling it a rookie mistake. The demon had almost grabbed our hero, but suddenly a fist mightier than Thor's hammer almost struck it in the face, but it blocked it using its rocky hands. That didn't matter though, as the strike was so powerful it sent the demon blasting backwards a solid half-mile, while the blue demon was trying to carry Liu away. Tang Tang and Jessica Rabbit had arrived to the scene, telling Aang that he was finally safe now. Jessica Rabbit immediately began to analyze the demons, noting that one of them was a blue core demon, which means it was a water type, while the other one was a red core demon, meaning it was an earth type. The blue core demon had agility as its main trait, meanwhile the red core demon had strength as its main trait. They had to save Liu first, otherwise she was definitely a goner, still entangled in the blue demon's sharp threads. The red demon was glad that he managed to block the attack somehow, otherwise there was no chance that it would have survived. Its head would have straight up exploded. Even now, it would feel the pain of 1,000 migraines lingering around for a while. Emo Boy was standing atop the wall, still screaming out loud. He was definitely terrified that something might happen to his comrades. He told his troops to get the defensive cannons ready. However, they weren't allowed to shoot yet because their own people were too close to the demons at the moment. A warrior woman came running towards him, screaming out his name as it seemed like she was running for a while. She came to a halt when she reached him, panting her breathlessness away, as she told him that they've detected a whole horde of lesser demons heading in their direction. He asked her how many demons were approaching them, and she simply said countless, because an entire demon wave was approaching. By the way, what the fuck is this angle? The moon was glowing red. It seems that the universe itself had a bloodlust today, as the surrounding forest was overtaken by terrifying roaring, growling, and screaming. There, a large horde of lesser demons began to emerge from within it. Their eyes were glowing red, and nothing but murder was on their mind. This was more demons than we had ever seen before in this series, and it seems that the city was in more danger than ever before. It was not just a regular horde of demons, this was a literal army, and the emo boy was starting to shit himself now. The nervous sweat started, as he wondered what the fuck he could possibly do in this situation. So, he ordered the alarms to be blared across the whole city. Every single warrior within the city walls had to be prepared for combat now, because they had no other choice if they wanted to keep living to see the morning. The alarms began to blare, and everybody was going to be woken up from their deep slumbers tonight. People immediately realized what was going on. It was a demonic wave of demons, and they had no time to waste. All of the warriors were telling each other to assemble at the wall, to get ready for combat because things could get really ugly. As the demon wave took the fight to the city, Tang Tang had realized that these were clearly well-prepared demons. Jessica Rabbit noted that the lesser demon wave was probably called in by the two one-fin demons they were fighting, so they needed to get this over with really quick. Liu's inner morals began to rise up again as she told the three warriors to head back and help defend the city, and that she would be fine either way. She felt as though her recklessness had dragged the squadron leaders down, which wasn't entirely untrue. The water-type demon was not having it though. It quickly splashed her mouth with its weird juices, telling her to shut the fuck up. This pissed the three musketeers off. Tang Tang was not going to allow her to be stolen away. As the three heroes began to rush towards the one-fin demons, it was time for some open combat. The earth-type demon slammed its hands into the ground, giving the crew a menacing laughter. As the demon's hands worked their voodoo into the ground, sharp spikes began to emerge in a straight line, disrupting our heroes from being able to attack. Tang Tang yelled out to Jessica Rabbit, warning her to the array of spikes coming her way. Thankfully, both of the squadron leaders had managed to dodge the spikes safely. They had jumped out of the way, while Aang was still running towards them. As the spikes kept targeting the squadron leaders, Aang was able to safely pass through them. How did that just happen? His body wasn't agile or strong enough to be able to do that. This is when he realized that the demon had simply not attacked him. The earth-type demon had made its way right next to Aang, telling him that it was time to go. This weird champ is somehow talking to him as if they're best friends. The demon passed by our hero and rammed into Jessica Rabbit's holy grails instead. It was so obvious that they weren't targeting Aang. Even the squadron leader Tang Tang was beginning to notice. He couldn't even process the thought before the strength-type demon started to attack him down, slashing away at him at a furious pace, and Tang Tang couldn't even detect where to block from. The water-type demon put its hand out, gesturing our hero to come towards Liu and take her. She started to get pulled back, deeper into the forest than ever before. Yup, the demon was kidnapping her, using its water abilities to flow through the air by boosting itself from the trees. It seems that the demon wanted to lure Aang into the forest, separating him from the rest of them. Aang realized this though. He was no idiot. He had more experience in fighting than anyone else in the world. This was an obvious trap, and he couldn't act foolishly brave right now because his body would limit him from doing anything anyways. As he stood there, contemplating his next move, he heard Tang Tang and Jessica Rabbit call out to him, both of them telling him not to follow. He wouldn't be able to beat it alone. Yet he was terrified. The thought of something happening to her was scaring the life out of him. He remembered that gaze of hers, thinking about how he had seen it before. It was familiar to him, and it was something that brought nightmares to his sleep. He remembered the faces of all those warriors that he failed to protect. They used to call him the Warrior King, and yet he could not save any of them. He had no choice anymore. After seeing and experiencing all that, there was no way that he was going to let her be taken away. So, our boy decided that he would never abandon her and started chasing after them deeper into the forest depths. Deep in the forest depths, where you couldn't even hear the sound of a pin drop, that's where the water demon had brought our girl Sidhu Liu. It stood over her, towering above her as she sat on the ground, tied up with its threads. It looked at her, analyzing her entire physique. It found her quite interesting, and I can't say that I blame it. It said that the one-fin demons were incredibly interested in human emotions. A little bird had alerted it to the fact that humans can scream when they're feeling a sense of despair or danger. It seems that Pervy wanted her to beg. That's what I'm going to call it now, Pervy. It wanted our girl to beg for her life. It wanted to hear her pleas. Liu was not the begging type though. Of course, she couldn't beg even if she wanted to because her mouth was covered by that weird splash thingy. Pervy quickly realized that, and decided to cut away the splashy thing that was holding her from screaming. Now, Pervy began to order her to scream, but it wouldn't hear a single word coming out of her mouth. She simply told Pervy perverts and off, saying that she was not going to beg for her life. Looking so meek was not her style. She was more of the strong and independent type. This confused the water demon. Pervy had no idea why she wasn't screaming for her life. That's what the legends had specified after all. Liu began to tell Pervy her story, the story of how she was raised in the dojo of a martial arts family. However, this was the one thing she was afraid of, and she would never bow her head to an enemy. She gave Pervy two options, either kill her right then and there or free her so that they may have a fair fight. Pervy had no idea what to say, so it just chuckled out of confusion. It immediately followed that chuckle with a smack directly to our girl's face. The fact that she wasn't going along with Pervy's kink had pissed it off. Now that Liu lay on the ground, Pervy told her why it had brought her here. She was just a bait, and only being used to catch Aang. Of course, she would have to die once the demons had accomplished that goal. Liu was angry, but she couldn't do anything for the time being. She was in a shitty situation and a horrible position. As Pervy began stepping closer to her, trying to assert its dominance, it heard a loud voice calling it from behind. Aang had arrived, his dagger in his hand and a clandestine confidence in his body language. He told Pervy to let Liu go and focus on its real target. Liu's eyes propped open as she saw Aang. She questioned why he would come alone to save her. Pervy was overjoyed at the sight of our hero. It couldn't believe that its trap had worked. The dumb bastard kept calling our hero the target, doing a weird kind of dance for some reason. This made Liu wonder why Aang was the target, but let's see if she's getting the answer to that question. Aang took his combat stance, holding his knife in one hand, while asking Liu if she was alright. She was still worming around on the ground, but she told him that she was fine. She followed up that statement with a question, asking him why the fuck he would come here on his own. She knew that he could not match the power of a one-fin demon, and yelled at him to leave. Pervy did not like that, and it kicked her in the stomach for not keeping her mouth shut. It broke him seeing her being hurt. He told the pervy demon to let him take her place because he was their target anyways. He just wanted her to be set free, to be let go so he wouldn't have another life on his conscience. Pervy was not too big of a fan of that idea because it just did not like humans. It started using its water powers, using it to slither through the ground like an anaconda until it made its way towards our hero. It spawned right near Aang's face, telling him that they both must die for Pervy to truly feel fulfilled. That was enough of talking, and Aang quickly used his sword to try and sneak in a slash attack on the dumb demon. It managed to dodge the attack. Obviously, its reflexes were too sharp. Pervy retaliated. The attack had left Aang unguarded, so Pervy used it to attack directly at his arm. Aang realized that this body cannot even respond to such a swift attack, as he grunted in pain. As Pervy began to swarm around our hero, using its transformative liquid-like body, it became even more curious after smelling Aang and noticing that he smelled like a demon. As it kept slashing away at Aang, our hero did his best to parry them with attacks of his own. He couldn't help but wonder how incredibly fast the demons had evolved to grow attributes such as water type, earth type, and more in the time he was dead. The fight ravaged on, and Liu could do nothing but spectate. Aang was getting cut away by this demon, making her realize that Aang's body was too weak. He couldn't use any skills other than physical techniques, and if the battle kept continuing, Aang would die, and so would she. She was terrified for him, questioning why he would even dare coming alone. He was never a match for a one-fin. As she crawled on her belly, she noticed a sharp rocky spike sticking out of the ground. She knew that she couldn't just sit still, she couldn't just watch her friend get brutally murdered by that perverted fucker, so she started crawling towards the spike, hoping to cut herself loose. In the meantime, Aang was fighting for his life. Pervy threw a punch, but Aang successfully blocked it. He realized that this might be an opportunity for a counterattack, so he slammed his sword at Pervy's ugly mug, knowing that if this attack landed, he would do hella damage. Yet, Pervy just liquefied itself out of the attack, and grabbed Aang's sword before it could do any more damage. It started bullying Aang. It seems that this demon really got off to humiliating people, calling Aang weak. It mocked the fact that he killed a one-fin in the cave, but couldn't even compete anymore. Pervy thought that Aang was faking his weakness, but Aang was getting aggravated the more the demon spoke. Aang had no idea what the demon was talking about. He didn't remember killing the one-fin in the cave. Of course, that was the work of King Crimson or whatever the fuck his name was. Pervy was not a fan of attitude, so its humiliation kink started getting more obvious as it stated that Aang must get punished. It grabbed Aang by both of his arms and started to pull him apart. It was doing it slowly, torturing our boy to the most of its capabilities. It was twisting Aang around, turning his body inside out, and he could feel every inch of pain as his screams surrounded the forest. As Pervy the demon held Aang at his fingertips, it called him a dishonest human. This demon was not a big fan of liars, so it kicked Aang into the stomach with its thick muscly leg. Before he could even fall, it kicked Aang away, sending him flying through 3 different trees before he could land on the ground. Just for a moment of respite. It wanted to know Aang's secret. Its curiosity knew no bounds, and it would kill Aang and everyone he loved in order to get it. Aang lay there on the ground. He could feel that his organs had gotten fucked from that kick. He couldn't believe the fall from grace he had. In his old body, he would have ripped this demon's head off in 1 second. Li was watching from afar, trying to free herself using that sharp rock she had found earlier. Her wrists were getting cut up as she tried to break free. She knew that she had to hurry to his aid. Pervy had made its way to Aang, and at this point, Pervy wasn't interested in the truth anymore. It just wanted to kill our hero and eat him instead. It licked its teeth from the delectable meal it was about to have. It knew that eating Aang would help it evolve into a more powerful being. It decided to take Aang away to its secret lair, where it would stir-fry our boy until he was nice and crispy. Yet things were not going to be as easy for Pervy as it had initially thought, as it could feel a knife grazing the back of its head. It was Liu. She had freed herself and made her way behind the pervert successfully, but her attack was a failed attempt at killing it, because Pervy managed to dodge it last minute. So, she followed it up with a kick to its chest, and it wasn't just a regular kick. She put both feet on its chest, acting like King from Tekken as she dropkicked the shit out of this demon. As Pervy went flying, Liu maneuvered herself midair so she could land on her feet. Come to think of it, she is kind of like a cat. She did a superhero landing, looking all cool and stylish and gorgeous. She was going to keep Aang safe. She was not going to let that pervy bastard hurt one of her teammates. As she stood there amidst the smoke, she knew that this was going to be a tough fight. But even Pervy was impressed by her skills. Aang lay there on the ground, seeing his friend standing up for him. This was the first time that he had found himself in a situation where he needed someone else's help instead. If these two somehow survived this, they were going to be bonded forever. He wondered how she had broken free from those bindings, as the cuts on her wrists and ankles were pretty much a clear explanation of how she had done it. Aang had a pretty nice view of the fight though, along with something else. She looked Pervy the demon dead in the eyes, and told it that if it was going to kill someone from Liu's squad, it was going to be her first. She was the captain after all. Of course, Pervy was totally fine with that. In fact, I think it preferred that anyways. Pervy started to piss water out of every pore in its body. A rain of sharp watery spikes started flowing towards Liu like homing missiles, as Pervy told her not to dodge any attacks if she really wanted to die. The spikes came flying towards her, and she had two options: either dodge them all and let Aang behind her get butchered by this onslaught of spiky water, or somehow block every single one of them. So, she did what no one else would have. She started to truly block the attacks. It was spark after spark. As the spikes of water clashed with her metal weapon, things were not looking good, except for some things, which looked great. In his own worry, Aang told her to dodge away out of their path and make sure that she was safe. She told him that she wouldn't dodge them. She was going to protect him, and if he said another word, it would just distract her. But deep in her heart, she knew that there were too many projectiles to dodge anyways. Pervy started being even extra and told her to watch out below. The spikes now started targeting her feet. Turns out, this was just a way to distract her, because soon after, another set of binds emerged and wrapped themselves around her, picking her up off the ground. She was immediately pulled towards Pervy the demon, and it seems that this was the end of this fight. He grabbed her by the throat, mocking her fearlessness of dying in battle. This fucker enjoyed doing the opposite of what people wanted, and it swore that it wouldn't kill Liu, but it would humiliate her instead. Now, if someone wants to say the safe word, we could end the fun right here. In any case, the fun wasn't going to end, at least not for Pervy, because it was going to make sure that it pulled the screams right out of Liu. She would be screaming in pain and begging for death when he was done. The demon was holding her by the throat, lifting her up high so that she could look into its eyes. Aang was on the ground not too far away, but he was powerless in this situation. He didn't have the strength to do anything. Internally, he was raging, yelling at the demon to let her go, yet his mouth could not speak the words. As he lay there on the ground, he felt a sense of déjà vu, almost as if he was just born again so that he could witness the horrors of his previous life once more. He had been brought back to life just so he could watch another teammate die in front of him. Nothing had changed. He couldn't even protect himself, let alone the others. In that moment, the core on his chest began to break just like his confidence in himself was. Just as he was on the verge of giving up, a random boost of energy began to surge through his body as he realized that he did not want to watch anyone die. He didn't want to live with the guilt of letting another teammate die, so he slammed his hand into the ground, trying as hard as he could to get up. As he became more enraged, an aura of red energy began to encumber the area, and the demon started to notice that something was awry. Pervy looked back, trying to understand what was going on, yet what it saw was something highly unexpected. Almost like a bullet, something grazed past it, and that flash of red aura stole the girl right out of its filthy demonic grasp. It finally realized what was going on. It was none other than Aang, who had now secured Liu in his arms. The demon was confused for a second. Aang hadn't even touched it, making it wonder if he did this using only the wind pressure. Liu was covered in spikes, some in her shoulder and some on her chest, and she was bleeding from her head as well. Aang could tell that she was suffering, so he told her that she did great on her first time as a leader to bring her some mental peace. She looked into his eyes, wondering who he was. She wanted to know if he was Aang. Aang's face had completely turned half demonic. As he looked into her eyes with one of his normal eyes and the other one being as red as a demon's, he told her that he would now take care of things. He gently put her on the ground, as Pervy the blue bastard was making its way towards them. Pervy finally started to sense the demonic scent within our hero, and called them out on it, stating that finally it was going to get to see Aang's secret. Aang stood up and started to make his way towards the fucker. He told the demon that he didn't know what exactly happened to make him feel like this either. He held his head in confusion, sensing that the power was surging out of his chest and shooting upwards towards his head. He felt the sharp pain of a migraine, as the power was rising even higher than his eye. He felt as though it was going to pierce through his entire body. He let out a loud scream, a scream so terrifying that it shook the ground beneath him and the whole forest could feel the shockwave. The core inside of his chest was realigning itself, changing its shape by twisting and turning as if it was alive. Suddenly, it had found its true shape, of a flower, a beautiful and delicate glowing red flower with a symbol that looked like two sides facing opposite directions, connected through the same handle. Pervy immediately realized what that core meant. It belonged to only one demon, and that was the Kingfin. Somehow, our naughty little Aang had the core of the king of the demons. Li was looking at this from afar, and still unsure of what the hell was even happening right now in front of her eyes. Aang did not know what was going on, but he knew that he was going to show this demon a good time. He looked as if he had turned into a demon himself, with his claw-like hands and his demonic face. He had awakened his one-finned form. He was going to make sure the demon did not enjoy this fight, up until the point where he was going to give it a miserable, painful, quick death. Outside of the forest, we see Tang Tang and Jessica Rabbit going head-to-head with the red demon. They're still dodging the spikes that it keeps punching out of the ground. It seems that this demon also noticed Aang's transformation, because it seems like its soul left its body in this moment. Its head started to spin from the incredibly strong aura of Aang's new form, and it could sense that it was someone of its kind, a demon. While the demon was too busy sniffing Aang's feet, Tang Tang had made his way right to him with a fist ready to ass blast him. As the fist made its way to the demon's face, Tang Tang told it not to get distracted. The punch was so powerful, shattering through its chest and breaking almost every ribcage in its body. Aang had given these two a fighting chance just by transforming. Tang Tang kept following it up with more punches, making the demon truly feel like a punching bag being used by a newly divorced man. That wasn't all though, because Jessica Rabbit wanted to get in on the action as she leaped atop them with her shiny sharp heels. She made a beautiful vertical dive, jamming both heels right into the demon's neck, splattering blood all across the dust-covered ground. The demon went flying, crashing into a busted-up old oak tree as Jessica Rabbit managed to land on her feet. And in those heels, that in itself was a feat. She wasn't done yet, as she immediately blasted off towards the demon one more time. She was showing off her power, and the demon could do nothing but watch and suffer. At this point, the demon was shitting itself. Jessica Rabbit was too strong and it couldn't even defend itself against her. It wasn't just her alone either. Tang Tang decided to join the party as the two duo up for a final attack that would end this demon's miserable existence. The two attacks landed simultaneously, blasting through the demon's chest as chunks of its stony body started falling out. They kept following it up with more and more attacks, and eventually popped a hole in the demon's lower chest. This was Tang Tang's doing. The man was a machine, and that punch was as seismic as it gets. Jessica Rabbit kicked the demon high up into the air. It seems that some Devil May Cry shit was en route for this fucking idiot. The demon looked at the big gap in its chest, and was incredibly frustrated at seeing the opening. It was annoyed now, and it was time for it to go out with a bang as it pulled out its core for a nuclear exit. Jessica Rabbit noticed this immediately, and told Tang Tang to watch out because it was trying to self-destruct while Tang Tang was trying to cover her from the explosion. The demon knew that it had them in its grasp, and it was time to blow them both up to kingdom fuck. Yet unfortunately, things weren't going to go its way as a large projectile came in and pierced through its back. The demon fell out of the sky like a missile, cruising through the air until it crash-landed on the ground. The self-destruct was a failure, as a large bolt from the defense artillery had put an end to its scary exit. Tang Tang and Jessica Rabbit noticed this. For a second they were freaked out before they quickly realized what happened. It was the defensive artillery indeed, as the soldiers of humanity were going up against the lesser demons trying to invade the city, their home. The edgelord was among them, commanding the army with a powerful display of strength as he cut through the demons with his knife. He was stopping them from being able to climb up the wall, chopping their limbs off as they tried to go up. He was getting overwhelmed though. There were way too many of them and there was no way that he could kill them all. He called the rest of his soldiers out, telling them to retreat back to the city because the demon wave was almost there. As the demons were overwhelming the city, Jessica Rabbit noted that they had to make their way back as well or the city would fall to the hordes of terrifying monsters. Yet Tang Tang had something else on his mind. The trainees were still out there, and he had no idea if they were safe or not. How could he just let them die out there? It was something he never imagined would happen. Jessica Rabbit was thinking straight though, telling him that even though she felt bad about them, she and him both had their own duties to do. She told him that they weren't just squadron leaders, they were warriors. And well, I have nothing else to say here, but I know some of you will be disappointed if I move this panel too soon. But time is up now, and Tang Tang was frustrated on the inside. He had no choice left but to head back to the city, yet he would pray for his soldiers to come back safely. So, after swallowing his pride, he started to retreat back to the city with the lovely Jessica Rabbit, because if they didn't, shit was going to get too overwhelming. We jump back into the dark forest, where Pervy the perverted demon is terrified due to Aang's new one-finned demon form. Lee was on the ground, laying there unconscious. Meanwhile, Aang keeps walking closer to the fucker, and it's getting scared, real scared this time. It was confused as to how a human could turn into a one-fin. Aang was going to give him an explanation, though he had rage and blood on his mind, and that's all he cared about. As Aang pulled up his demonic index finger and charged up a green ball of energy, he realized that perhaps this was his calling. This demonic power might be the reason why he was reincarnated. As he flicked the green ball of light back towards Liu's direction, he knew that he was given this power to change not only himself and his powers, but the whole world, history itself. The green energy flew towards Liu's wholly injured body as Aang kept walking closer to the demon. She began to receive a powerful healing aura surrounding her. The spikes embedded in her chest start to melt away as she finally begins to heal from all of her injuries. Pervy's even more confused. How did Aang even have the abilities of a wood-type one-fin demon? It just did not make sense to the demon. Aang recalled what happened. It was vague in his memories, but he remembered absorbing the wood type 1 fin demon. Aang looked the demon dead in the eyes, as sprouts of root-like trees start to emerge out of the ground at an unprecedented pace. He asked him something that caught his curiosity. He asked Pervy that if he was to absorb him, would he get the powers of a water-type demon too? The demon was overwhelmed by the incredible powers he was witnessing. He had never seen a wood-type demon being this strong. Aang had built himself a throne of bark, one that he used to tower above the loser water demon. He was now ready to test the extent of his brand new demonic powers, as this could probably be the key to saving the world. As Aang stood towering above Pervy, with his throne of wood, the demon asked him how he had a one-fin demon's core, and how he could absorb the abilities of a wood type. Was Aang one of them? Was he truly a demon? Aang was reveling in this moment. He was living it up, feeling like he had terrified this demon to a level that he had never before. He had never seen a demon this scared of him, even in his previous life as the king of all warriors. This demon was trembling, shaking with an uncontrollable hold of fear. It was so scared of Aang that it literally could not move. Aang gripped his feet into the bark, with the roots twisting and turning around his ankles until they were one. He shot himself off the structure, dashing towards the demon like a harpoon from an experienced whaler's hand, before pausing quickly right at its face, taunting the demon, telling it to hit him with all it's got. Aang wanted to see how strong he was in this form, while the demon in its nervousness decided to strike. It hit Aang with all it had, a seismic attack that Aang managed to dodge within a mere microsecond instant by using his wood-type root manipulation. As he landed on the ground, he was proud of himself. Manipulating elements was an extraordinary power that he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in himself. He looked at Pervy and told it that he absorbed this power from the wood-type demon that had the bad luck of running into him. He put his hand forward and closed his fist halfway. This resulted in a plethora of roots breaking through the ground to surround the kinky demon bastard. They twisted around Pervy and wrapped themselves around his face. It was time for him to see how it felt to get caught in a web himself. The roots tightened themselves on each of its limbs, pulling it hard against its own body weight. The demon's throat felt like it would fucking explode. Aang was the puppeteer, using his hands to make the roots do his bidding. It came so naturally to him. It wasn't a difficult thing to learn for him, and he felt like it was something extremely simple to learn. The demon was getting strangled, and it could do nothing. It was completely powerless against Aang's newly grown fangs. Aang was mocking it now in the worst way, telling it to struggle. This was his way of taking revenge for everything he did to Liu. The demon had one last trick up his sleeve. This one was going to be its final major trump card. It screamed the word disintegrate at the top of its lungs, exploding itself into a splash of water. Did this idiot just kill itself, or was there something more to this? Aang stood there, waiting to see the demon's next move. He wanted to see what was coming and how his body would handle it. Immediately, it splurged out of the ground like a cyclonic wave, tearing a whole chunk of rock from around him. It dashed at Aang, its claws looking sharper than ever. This was Pervy's last chance to attack. It was confident in its ability to survive this, as its claws landed straight on Aang's arm, which he used to protect his face with. The demon grabbed our boy by the arm, claiming that since he was a wood type, he wouldn't be able to disintegrate and escape out of this grip. In a single pull, Pervy ripped Aang's arm right off of his body, turning our boy into Commander Erwin. This is an Attack on Titan reference, only for those of you who are the elitist anime fans. Pervy immediately followed up that brutal move with more slashes, and Aang tried his best to dodge each one. This demonic power was far beyond his understanding according to the demon, and he was going to exploit it. The demon kicked our hero far away, sending him flying back several meters. This time, Aang wasn't going to land on his feet. He was about to hit the ground at Mach speed, powerless and weak from all of the damage that was done to him. At least that's what the demon thought, because Aang was just testing out what this form could fucking endure. While flying through the air, he gestured his hand slightly and the ground began to tear up once more. The amount of ground tearing this one fight has had, it's kind of insane. The roots began to prop up from within, and they stopped his fall with grace. As he got off of his wooden protective barrier, he told the demon that it was right. Aang did not know the full extent of the demonic power. He had no idea what things this power could help him accomplish. At least not yet. He looked up at the demon, giving it a grin that solidified his self-confidence, as he told the demon that he was the strongest warrior in the world, and he was pretty good at learning new things. The stump where his arm used to be started surrounding itself with a green aura and roots that protruded from the ground. His arm was starting to heal with the power of the wood-type regenerative abilities. As he looked at the demon with the terrifying glare, proclaiming that the only thing he needed to do to put an end to the demon's miserable fucking life was to familiarize himself with the powers that he now had. Pervy was shocked. How did this little brat just figure out wood-type self-regeneration in a mere instant? It was something not even a one-fin demon would be able to do in such a quick manner. As he showed off his brand new regenerated arm, he told the demon that he really was good at learning new things, and another thing that he would learn today was how to kill a water-type one-fin demon. Our hero muzzled his feet into the ground, readying himself for an impactful launch. He lowered down his body like an athlete, one who had practiced in going from 0 to 100. He dashed off like a bullet from a rifle with a determination on his demonic face and a rage in his golden burning eyes. He was quickly closing in on the demon, but this time around he would do something new to throw Pervy off. He sprouted roots from below. He was going to use these to leverage himself and shoot his movement speed up even higher than what it was before. That is exactly what happened, as all of the mini roots were giving him a boost of speed that the demon could not predict. He honed into it like a missile, and just as the demon thought it knew what it had to block, it was fucked. Aang had simply passed by him like a calm breeze, which left the monster flabbergasted as to what he was doing. Turns out, Aang had used himself as a distraction and caught the demon's foot with his roots. Pervy, the perverted demon, was now tangled once more. Before the demon could even act, Aang was in front of it and he grabbed the demon's face with both of his hands. At this point, seeing the red aura glow around our hero had the demon pissing itself as it let out squeals of fear. Our hero looked straight into the demon's eyes, piercing through its brain and staring into its demonic dark soul. He told it that there was no point in running, he would always catch up. The roots began to lift our hero, as he was now towering above the demon in a power move. The demon fell to its knees. The pain was too excruciating and the fear too overwhelming. As the demon felt its insides twisting and turning, Aang stated that he was a bit tired of the fight they were having. Its body was becoming sore, large tumors started to erupt everywhere and they were glowing green. As Aang kept holding its face, the demon's screams got louder and louder as it started to cry out of pain from its body completely deforming from what it was. Eventually, that pain turns into an explosive end for the demon as the sores blow up, exploding Pervy straight into destination fucked. Aang had done it. He had killed a one-fin demon all on his own, and he didn't even need to break a sweat to do so. This was the demonic power he had unlocked, a power so strong that nothing seemed impossible anymore. As bits and pieces of the demon flew everywhere, a small piece of its flesh that held the core came into view. The water-type core was beautifully blue, and it had the one-fin insignia plastered within it. Suddenly, the injured and completely bruised Pervy came out of nowhere, still laughing as it went for one last swing at our hero. That wasn't going to work out though, because the roots sprouted from the ground and pierced through its body from almost every single direction. Aang knew that Pervy could disintegrate its body, so he already thought of a plan to just ensure that the core was visible. He knew that even if the demon disintegrated, the core would still remain in place. As he held the demon firmly in its place, he stated that it had grossly overestimated itself. Its core was being pulled away from it, and the demon had nothing it could do. It could only watch as its life was stripped away right from its grimy hands. Aang held the core in his hand, and now our boy had complete power over this loser. As he moved it closer to his mouth, Aang knew that even a 7-fin demon would die once its core is destroyed, so Pervy was just small fry. He gave it one last smile, as he told the demon that he would be taking its water-type powers. He stood towering above the demon. All of the power was his, and the demon had nothing to do but accept its death. The demon started to melt away, turning into its original form, water. It drizzled down into nothingness, dripping away slowly against the roots of our currently wood-type hero. As Aang walked away from the battle, with the red moon shining upon him, he held the core up in his hand, ready to absorb its demonic goodness. And so he did, closing his fist tightly, which made the core shatter completely. He drank the water that poured out from within it, while laughing like a maniac as he had just unlocked a whole new level of strength. Yet deep within this confident surface, the demonic thoughts had started to invade our hero's psyche. With his opponent defeated, Aang now stands under the full moon, holding its core in his hand. He crushes the blue demon's core with his half-demonic hand, and starts drinking its essence as if he was drunk with power. Needless to say, each drop of the core's essence was making his powers surge. His red aura soon transformed into a more stable shade of blue, as Aang licked his lips to comment that it didn't taste bad. He then glances over at Sidhu right behind him, who was still unconscious on the ground, protected by a layer of green core energy. The girl looked peaceful in her little cocoon, but perhaps her life was still in danger. With his newly devoured powers, Aang turned himself into blue squirt and started moving over towards the unconscious girl. Once next to her, his body started solidifying itself, giving me some serious Terminator vibes. As the liquid finally assembled back into Aang, we see that one half of his body is still demonic, almost as if he was evolving. The Demon King's voice in his head spoke to him, telling him that he's meant to devour the demons, but kill the humans. Aang, possessed and out of control, repeated after the voice in his head, ready to do its bidding. He stood tall of Sidhu, smiling like a serial killer toying with his victim, ready to land the finishing blow on the girl. And he didn't hesitate either, because his blow managed to shatter the girl's protection shield immediately. Blood was supposed to splatter, and Sidhu's life was supposed to be forfeit. However, just as his demon claw could reach for her face, Aang managed to stop it. He bit his lip to fight back the brainwash, and cursed his pathetic self for losing control. In fact, he had to let his entire human hand get pierced in order to stop his demonic side. Looks like he had finally gained some strength to fight back the Demon King's control. Even if he is possessed, Aang was once the protector of humanity. Hurting another human goes against his deepest rooted principles, and Sidu Liu is someone he has only ever wanted to protect. So, with the mental strength of someone who can actually afford to call himself the former king of all humans, Aang shouted apart the demon in his head, fighting to take back control of his own body. This came as an immense surprise to the Demon King's spirit, who had never expected that a human would be able to resist his will. But since he found it very interesting, he decided not to put up a fight, and disappeared quietly into Aang's heart. While all of that happened, a massive human versus demon battle was still being fought at the city walls. Lan Snow and Makoto stood back to back with each other on top of the walls, where the finless demons had now started to climb up. Snow, with all his explosive power, charged up a fist to fight back the demons. His attack was aimed at the ground, and the shockwave of his thrust was used to propel the finless bastards out of the walls. Of course, Makoto managed to maneuver out of the impact with her agility. Snow was now frustrated, wondering why every other team had gathered to fight the demons, but Aang and Sidu were still nowhere to be found. As Makoto effortlessly dodged the claw swipe of a blue demon, with all her assets bouncing up and down, and her knife twirling in her hands, she informed Snow that 2 warriors snuck out of the city earlier, and were targeted by one-fin demons. She uses the same knife to thrust into the demon's throat in a single killing blow, without even looking at it, and continues that she's almost certain that the warriors in question were their teammates. Lan Snow immediately loses his shit upon hearing that, wondering why their idiot friends would do something so irrational. And honestly, he's completely right. Makoto knows that too, but her head hurts just thinking about it. Right now, she's too worried that her friends are being targeted by one-fin demons, whom they probably stand no chance to fight against. Snow has a lot of questions, starting with why 2 one-fin demon would appear in such a remote area, but the fight ahead of him takes priority. So, they both put all the questions behind them, and continue to focus on enduring the demon wave in front of them, as yet another huge blue monster scales the walls. Meanwhile, Gel and Tang were charging into the enemy hordes as independent ballistic units. Even though they were managing to incapacitate them with one strike after another, the demons were seemingly endless, and a huge number of them were starting to scale the city walls. The edgelord was fighting close to them as well, and as he cut a line through the demons, his first priority was to ask the other leaders if their cores were still intact. Over here, Tang had leapt up into the air, his fist drawn back, and a large group of scary-looking demons looking at him. As he came crashing down on a poor bastard, splattering its green blood everywhere, the other demons were also forced to fly away from the impact. He then turned to the edgelord, informing him that his core isn't exhausted, and Gel should be doing the same as well. We now see Gel, drawing her left leg back into a kick, but making me look in all the wrong places, all the while thinking that if they hadn't fought the one-fin demon together, their cores would have been depleted of energy. Of course, her kick eventually comes out, and thwarts away a bunch of demons with the sheer gust of her force. And as they all circle together in the middle of the horde, Gel asks the edgelord about their next plan. The dude makes the observation that the finless demon's attacks have decreased significantly ever since the one-fin demon was defeated. And since the other one fin went somewhere else, the entire army has turned into soldiers without a commander. These finless guys have no thoughts of their own, and they're simply attacking aimlessly at everything. He then states how the finless demons are known to understand the fear of death, and one way to make them back out would be to make them fear the humans. He tells Tang and Gel that they would use this opportunity to weaken their desire to attack, and buy time for the soldiers on the wall to call for backup. It was time for an explosive battle. Of course, as their cores glowed with surging energy, both Tang and Gel agreed to the plan immediately. The demons were shaken by a sudden disturbance in the force, as both warriors went Super Saiyan mode in the middle of the battle. They jumped high up into the air, getting themselves a bird's eye view of the entire field. The cameraman once again found the best ever angle to give us all the right shots, as the warriors got ready to rain hell upon their enemies. They kicked back the air like Sanji from One Piece, and came crashing down like comets to explode on the battlefield. Their twirling motion and gathering energy was about to crash land on the finless demons. And soon as it happened, a massive number of the creatures was blown away by the cackling red thunder of the impact. A massive whirlpool of dust and debris opened up right in front of the city, scattering the demon wave in all directions. As the smoke cleared, the glowing red silhouettes of our champion leaders emerged. After the attack on the one-fin demon, this was the second time these two had to combine their core energies in a battle, and if their codes and their bodies had no limitations, they could keep doing this until they killed all the demons. But they both know that such is not the case, so they step forward once again, and leap straight onto a different spot to cause yet another catastrophic impact while their bodies can still endure. Meanwhile, back on the ground, our edgelord is fighting a battle of his own. While it's true that the red cores have the most explosive energy, you can't sleep on the lethality of his blue core either. He kicks off the ground and shoots straight into the enemies with the speed of a fighter jet. His agility is unmatched, and he slices up the dastardly demons with one quick slash after another, leaving a wave of corpses in his wake. Makoto and Snow had the pleasure of witnessing their squadron leaders fight at their full power, dividing up the demons into small and smaller waves. This was the first time they had come to know about their real strength. Snow was starting to feel a bit jealous of their prowess, and he felt a strong desire to fight like his leaders as well. It has now been a while, and the edgelord is starting to get exhausted. The others are in similar conditions, but their bodies can still hold on, and their eyes are still showing focus. Most importantly, their desire to fight off the demons is overpowering their exhaustion. The three leaders stood in front of the city gates, and the enemy army had now thinned down by a considerable margin. Since the remaining demons were scared and starting to back off, the edgelord figured that it was the perfect time to cheer up the other warriors. He turned his head towards the walls, informing his warriors that the demons were falling apart, and it was time for them to replenish their strength and keep on fighting. The fledgling warriors of the city all shouted with happiness, thanking their squadron leaders, and refueling themselves with newfound energy. With this, the edgelord was sure that the demon army would finally be forced to retreat for good. However, his eyes were soon shot open, as his senses warned him about the presence of an overwhelming demonic energy in the vicinity. He looked in the direction of the demons, and warned the others that something dangerous was coming in their direction, perhaps the one-finned demon who ran away earlier. As the smoke dissipated from the scene, the demons were instinctively starting to make way for the anonymous silhouette to pass through. What came out of the smoke was a true surprise to all the squadron leaders, who could hardly believe their eyes. It was none other than our boy Aang, holding the unconscious Sidu Liu in his arms. He walked casually among the demons, who kept drawing away from him with each step he took closer. His face and expression was still clouded in mystery, but his peers started calling out his name as soon as they recognized him. He had now managed to cross the demon line in the direction of the city, and no creature dared to bare its fangs against him. Jel could clearly see that Aang and Sidu were back, but she was confused as to what could have happened to the one-finned demon. Meanwhile, the edgelord is starting to notice that the demons are getting restless again, and he's worried that Aang might get attacked very soon. And his hunch turns out to be right, as the frightened and berserk demons lash out at our hero with their razor-sharp claws. Of course, the squadron leaders wouldn't let that happen, so they started rushing to the rescue. Unfortunately, they were still too far, and the claws of the demons were inching ever so closer to our hero. But then, just as they were about to deal some serious visceral damage, Aang looked back at the demons with the intense glare of their king, ordering them to fuck out of his sight. All the attacking finless halted their movement. They were too scared of the existence that stood before them. And when Aang's threatening aura started to circle him, all of the surrounding demons jumped back with fear. One of the finless was down on his knees, looking at our hero's feet and trembling. His fear made him flinch and claw into the dirt, until he eventually decided to haul ass and get as far away from Aang as possible. Watching the red demon flee grabbed the attention of the remaining finless, which triggered a domino effect, as they all started running to flee away from Aang. My man stood in the middle like Moses, and the red sea of demons parted ways at his presence, allowing him to walk freely in the middle. Tang and Jel stopped their rush when they witnessed this bizarre scene. And in a matter of moments, as everyone else saw from the top of the wall, the entire area was free of the demon invasion. The warriors couldn't believe their eyes at first when they watched the demons leave, but their surprise soon turned into loud cheers as the reality settled in. A battle was fought, and they had come out victorious. Some warriors started discussing among themselves why the demons would leave so abruptly, but the answer was obvious to the rest. They all cheered on their heroic squadron leader, because they were sure that the enemy fled after witnessing their overwhelming strength. But things weren't so obvious for the leaders in question. In fact, they were left wondering if the reason for the demons' escape was something else. Tang was the one with the strongest hunch, because as he looked at Aang, and how fearless he stood next to the demons, the instructor knew that something was definitely wrong. And then, as our hero inhaled some large breaths, his knees finally caved in, and Sidu was dropped from his hands. Looks like he was on the verge of collapse the entire time, but his sheer willpower kept him awake. Tanting noticed the boy's fall, and with a concerned look in his eyes, he and the other leaders started running to fetch their students. Everyone obviously had a lot of questions on their minds, but Tang warned the others that their students' safety comes first. And with that, Aang could finally close his eyes to a deep slumber. The next thing he knew, he found himself floating atop a giant demon skull in the middle of a crimson sea. A voice whispered in his mind, telling him that he really likes using his powers. Aang was now conscious, and he asked the voice to reveal its identity. The voice kept resounding around him like a void, telling him that they had met half a century ago, and that Aang should be able to remember it. And sure enough, our hero already had a vague idea. He recalled the image of the two eight-finned demons who annihilated him in his last battle, and assumed that the voice belonged to one of the two. He asks the voice if there are more such demons in the world, but he gets assured that he will come to know about their existence in the future. Aang's eyes widen at that response, and as he looks to the side, the king of demons is sitting right next to him in all his naked glory. There's a very small portion of my audience who's going to squeal at this image, and I just want to let you know I don't mind. The demon tells our hero that he is called the Crimson Fin Demon, and he is the strongest 8-fin demon to ever exist. Hearing that, our boy Aang just stares at him blankly, probably admiring his incredible abs. The Crimson King smiles when he sees that Aang isn't scared of him at all, which only confirms why he was able to reject him previously. He informs our hero that he won't harm him in any way, at least for now, but Aang has some other questions in mind. He wants to know why he was chosen, and he wants to know what has been happening to his body. That's a lot of questions for their first encounter, and the Crimson King is a bit too lazy to answer. Another hand touches Aang's neck from behind, startling him quite a bit. And as we zoom out, we see that the demon made another copy of himself to answer our hero, which only tells him that there's no need to rush. After all, his plans to Aang will be revealed eventually. He slides his fingernail across our hero's hardened muscles, informing that they now share the same body. And in order to keep both of them safe, Aang will have to work hard at evolving himself in the future. I know some of you guys are squealing again, but I have to move on to the next panel before I get demonetized. The copy starts to dissipate, and the real Crimson King now stands in front of our hero. He opens his arms in his direction, telling him to quickly get stronger so he can once again become the perfect existence that he was. Aang was now